Have you ever thought about what a pastor might think about his people being involved in prison ministry? Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're reaching out for those who have been left unheard. My name is David Scheringa. I'm the president of Crossroad Bible Institute and the host of your program. Now, I've in the studio with me today a good friend and colleague, Reverend Art Van Walde. Welcome, Art, to the program.
It's good to be here.
Art is the senior pastor at the Haven Christian Reformed Church in Zeeland, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Been there about a year and a half, and before that, I knew you for many years in the Pella region. You were at what was the name of that church?
I was at Calvary Christian Reformed Church. I was there almost 9 years.
And we came into contact a lot there because in the Pella region, we have hundreds of instructors for CBI, and so I would visit her once a year or so. And most of the time, you would invite me to preach in your church, and I appreciate that.
That's
correct. Now you're in Haven.
But we need to go back even further. We have another connection, Dave.
Bundy?
Bundy.
That's right. Bundy,
Yes.
Minnesota. That's where my first internship as a first-year seminarian was.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, 18 years after that, my son Greg had an internship there. A protege of mine, Tom Grulsma, served there. Was that now after or before you?
Okay, Tom Grulsma was there, and then Greg came on as intern, and then when he left the parsonage, we moved in.
Then you went in. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. And so we have that wonderful, wonderful Bundy connection as well. But we have another connection, and that's prison ministry.
Correct.
And that has drawn us together in various circumstances and so forth. And I thought, boy, it would be great to have once again on the program a pastor and talking about prison ministry and what that does for a church and what you've seen it done for your congregation. And also you have worked one-on-one, face-to-face, personally with people in prison. So where do we start? First of all, let's just start with, as a pastor, when and how did you get interested in prison ministry?
It started many years ago when I was doing an internship at Providence Church in Cutlerville. And Crossroads Bible Institute was going then. I was before your time, but at the Michigan Fair, they had a booth. And I went and I manned that booth at the Michigan Fair. And that was my first encounter with Crossroads Bible Institute back in 1992 or 3 it was.
Wow. So that goes way back. And I am amazed at how many church leaders got their start in prison ministry through Crossroad.
Yeah, so that's where it all started. And then I started grading lessons for Crossroads Bible Institute. I started doing that, I believe it was back in probably 1996 or 7.
You became an instructor.
I became an instructor.
Were you ordained at this time?
No, I was a student pastor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did this instructing do for your love for prison ministry?
Well, I started to read the letters and the lessons from these men, and I was inspired by what they were writing and how they were desiring to grow in their faith. And I guess, yeah, you could say I was hooked.
So your start in prison ministry began as a Crossroad instructor, just like we have thousands and thousands of them out
Correct.
there, many of them watching today, or maybe others thinking about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You decided to become a Crossroad instructor. You got into reading those lessons, correcting them, writing those letters, and it got hooked. I was in Northwest Iowa a few weeks ago, and an instructor came up to me and said, "You know, Dr. Scheringa, being an instructor is addicting."
Mm-hmm.
But it does hook you if you have that gifting for it.
Mm-hmm.
You became a pastor in what year?
I was ordained in 1998.
So that's just 2 years after you became an instructor. And where did you first go? Was it Bundy?
It was Bundy.
And after Bundy was Pella, and then now Haven. So what happened with prison ministry? Because I think I know the answer. Crossroads, your involvement with Crossroad became a gateway to further involvement.
Yeah, in Bundy, I was grading lessons, and I was encouraging other members to do so, and they were getting involved in the ministry. But then I went to Iowa, and one day a gentleman who I did not know, was not a member of my congregation, came up to me because he had heard me speak about Crossroads Bible Institute. And he mentioned to me that he was in prison ministry in the Newton prison, and would I like to go in with him?
Which was about an hour from there.
About half an hour or so.
Okay, yeah, I was there just last year. Okay.
So I went with him and heard him teach a class, and they invited me to come in to start teaching coursework. So I did that. And then, if you remember, I contacted you one day.
I remember that.
Saying, Dave, we have a bunch of graduates from this IFI program, but they're still at the Newton prison. They need more material to go through. So then started to take some Tier 3 course material.
The college level courses, you began to teach those in person. You lectured in person there.
Correct. And that started a wonderful ministry
And
with
you did
me
that
face
for
to face.
a number of years, but then IFI got closed down.
Mm-hmm.
And then that ended at that time.
It did.
But you had many years of doing that, and I think that was probably your work, had to be the groundwork for what today is a prison church.
That is correct.
Reverend Admiral is there. In fact, he just invited me this week to come out and speak there and preach there this spring. So the IFI experience or teaching her was not lost. It planted seeds.
It planted seeds for the prison church that is there. Yeah, I was with Rick Admiral having coffee with him when he was in Pella for Tulip Time, and he was a seminarian, was going to be graduating in a few months.
He, too, got turned on to prison ministry through Crossroad Bible Institute.
That is correct. And I locked eyes with him, and I said, you know what, Rick, you are going to be the planting pastor of this prison congregation.
Wow.
And
had your crystal ball out.
I did. I had that William Farrell moment. You know, you're the man, Rick. And yeah, I prayed over him and his wife, and that started the groundwork for the Newton Prison Congregation.
Now, I want to quickly now change gears in terms of the fact that for the Newton Prison Congregation, perhaps you took some people with you when you taught those courses, but especially in your church in Pella and many other churches there, lots of Crossroad Bible Institute instructors. So with a heart for prison ministry, as a pastor, you must have seen this as a good thing for your congregation to be involved in. Why?
Because people are seeing face to face what the gospel does, how it comes
firsthand.
They're coming in contact with people and seeing what grace does. It transforms people's lives. And when they see that, they get excited about their own faith. It's almost like there's a renewal of their faith, seeing someone come to faith.
Wow.
And
you like to see that in your congregation.
I love to see
what
it.
pastor wouldn't?
It's wonderful. I'm not going to say his name, but there is a gentleman in my previous congregation who was involved in prison ministry, and it has erupted into this wonderful, wonderful ministry in his life where he now goes overseas. He goes to Haiti on a regular basis.
And
leading teams over there. And
the cross-cultural experience of helping prisoners is something that opened his eyes to greater missional evangelistic needs.
Yes, most definitely.
That's a wonderful thing. We come up with a brochure now, and it was part of a newsletter on 25 reasons people say they like to be instructors. I wonder if we could do something like that someday with pastors like yourself, and I want to keep talking about this, but reasons pastors like to see their people involved in Crossroad. Now, you just named a very important one, and that is they see faith on fire, and it empowers and puts them on fire. Is that the good way to put it?
Yes, it is. They become contagious in their own faith, and that contagiousness being involved in prison ministry comes into the local church, and they begin talking about it to their friends. They begin talking about it when they get opportunities to speak. They tell people, this is what's going on in my life. This is what I see happening.
Well, that's really very interesting. It injects revival into the local church because people's personal faith is on fire, but also they're talking about it.
Correct.
And they're saying, you should become an instructor. You should become involved in prison ministry. And then it initiates these spiritual conversations. That's what our forefathers would talk about. Geestelijke gesprekken is the old phrase, but it was spiritual conversations. We don't have that much in this world today. Our conversations tend to be pretty secular, right? And about the mundane, day-to-day things.
Yeah, how the Bears lost this past Sunday.
Yes, and how the Lions won on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But that's about the extent of it. But now, if you are sharing the gospel with instructors, that just stimulates spiritual conversation, because they say, you know what, my student asked me this, this, and this. You have these spiritual conversations which become a beautiful thing, and it lightens up the whole church, doesn't it? It puts a light on that we're here for a reason.
It does, and you see lives changed. I'll give an example. When I moved here to Zeeland, the moving company that we had pack the truck, I knew there was a former student of mine from the IFI program from Newton Prison that was working for that moving company.
Wow.
So I specifically requested him. And the moving company said, he's our most requested employee.
Huh.
Whatever happened to him in prison, it must have been wonderful how he's changed as an individual.
Whoa.
And he comes and he's helping load the truck, and he pulls me aside and he says, Art, he goes, remember those classes you taught from Crossroads Bible Institute to us? He goes, they gave me a depth of understanding the Bible that I never had before. He goes, thank you. He goes, it's changed my life. He goes, I'm now involved in a really good Bible-believing church. He goes, I'm married. I'm having children. He goes, my life has changed.
Isn't that beautiful? Well, that's the testimony to the power of God's Word. It's a testimony to the fact that it's an answer for people who talk about jailhouse religion. There's hypocrites in the church outside and behind the bars.
Correct.
The real deal is there because the Word is real and it's powerful, and you see the difference it makes. And it makes a difference in the lives of church members who see this happening. Do you know we have not had to recruit one instructor for, I think, around over 10 or 12 years. Why is that? Because, as you said, church members are saying, you got to be involved in this. It's so popular being an instructor like in West Michigan and Northwest Iowa and in Pella, that it's almost socially unacceptable not to be an instructor. It's just like, is there something wrong with your spiritual life that you're not sharing the gospel? Because it just turns people on. Another area that may or may not be relevant, because I don't think you and I have talked about this, and that is, are people sensitized to a population they never thought of? Are people remembering forgotten ones in a new way?
No. I don't think I think many of our churches have forgotten about the men and women that are behind bars. They have forgotten about their lives, their needs, their spirituality, and that someday they're going to be released and they're going to need a home, a place to plug into.
So you're saying that being an instructor does sensitize them to this population?
Yeah, it does. It does sensitize them to it.
I probably did not ask that properly. But, okay, I'm saying, does it make them aware of a whole new world?
Being an instructor, yes, it does. But the average church member that isn't involved with Crossroads Bible Institute, they don't have a clue.
Not a clue. Gotcha. Okay, so the church without prison ministry is clueless about what Chuck Colson said is the largest mission field in North America, the prisons and jails of our country, right in our own backyards. But people are numb to it, totally ignorant of it. But when they get involved, they realize, whoa, there is work to be done here. There are things to be learned. There's issues, people coming back, getting jobs, staying out of prison. So they become aware of this whole demographic, this whole area of criminal justice, which is huge in our country today. And people often have simplistic ideas about some of that stuff that's going on, don't they?
Oh, they have very simplistic ideas. You know, the theory today in our nation is, you know, lock people up. That takes care of the problem.
Throw away the key.
It doesn't. It creates more problems.
Right.
We need to restore people after they have committed a crime. We need to restore them and help them grow so they can become an effective part of society. We're not doing that well.
We're not. Fortunately, I say fortunately, because of budget deficits, the country's being forced to look at alternatives. But I don't think it's coming out of a principial moral corner, but it's coming out of a pragmatic financial one. You're a pastor of the church. Is it a lot of work for the pastor for people to be involved in Crossroad? I mean, is it a lot of extra staff time, and does it cost the church lots of money for people to be involved in Crossroad?
Costs the church nothing, and it doesn't take any of my time except if I have to fill out a pastor's recommendation, which
is a privilege.
Which is a privilege to do, yes. Other than that, doesn't take any of my time, doesn't take any of the finances of the church. I see it as a total
win-win
blessing for the church.
Well, I wanted pastors to hear that, because a lot of times pastors hear about a program for their church, and they're right away thinking, okay, it's going to cost us a bunch of money. And they're thinking, it's going to take up my staff time, it's going to take up my time. But you have been involved with churches in Crossroad. This is your third church now.
Correct.
And you can testify as a senior pastor, this is good for the church, it's good for the church members, doesn't take staff time, doesn't cost any money. I mean, it sounds too good to be true, but it is true.
You see people's lives changed, and one of the last things that happened for me in Pala, Iowa, there was a gentleman that was released from prison that became a member of Calvary Church, and he had not been baptized before. So for the first time in Calvary's history, we had a dunking in the church.
In the church?
In the church, because he wanted to be immersed. And in the Reformed Church.
In that little baptismal font, how'd you get him in there?
Well, we went to the local Baptist church that had a portable baptistry. and they actually came and they set it up for us. And we had a wonderful baptism service where he was immersed. And just seeing this man who I had a relationship with in prison, released, reintegrated in society, having a job in Pella, and then seeing him baptized and coming up and saying, this is my faith.
Yeah.
This is what God has done for me. It was powerful. It was one of the most precious memories of my ministry.
I think we're going to stop right there. So much more we can talk about, how it's a safe and secure program, your church is not at risk or anything like that. But we'll have to say that for another time. I hope you'll come back to the program.
Love to.
It's just fantastic to have a pastor here who's on fire for helping prisoners, but realizes it's even a greater help for his own congregation. Thank you very much for being here, Art.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching this special edition of Crossroad Connection. We hope that if you're viewing and you're not an instructor, click on to our website at cbi.tv and get the information you need, or tell a friend about what a great way to get this program into their church. My name is David Schuringa. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again right here next week.